My guy, as I was just alluding to, though, Geno Smith. So a lot of you guys might be, oh, it's a sleeper. What? He was great last year. And sure, he was. Quarterback 5, in fact, last year, only outscored by Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Joe Burrow. That's insane already off the bat that Geno Smith was better than everyone else not named those Elite Four. He's now going, though, as the quarterback 15 at pick 114 on Fantasy Pros, similar price tag on Underdog, despite that impressive finish and despite his next season looking even better for 2023 because they add JSN, one of the most explosive slot rookies. I know you're an Ohio State guy, Mo, so you definitely know how damn good JSN can be. He outperformed Olave and Garrett Wilson, the two young darlings, when they were on the field together. So this is an elite weapon to join it. I know he's got the wrist thing. He might miss 3 to 4 weeks. Maybe he's out till the week 6 bye. Doesn't matter. Geno Smith was QB5 without him. You add him in at whatever point this year, and it becomes maybe the best trio. Maybe. I think definitely the best trio if JSN hits the ceiling, a top 5 slot receiver the last decade, in my opinion. So this is going to be a ridiculous trio of receivers. He's looked the part, too, until he got hurt. Jackson Smith, the Jibu did. So I really, really love the weapons cabinet. I think his situation's even better. And it's just, I get the hardest part for probably people to stomach, and maybe this is why he's falling down to QB15 is, was it a one-year wonder? It's Geno Smith, after all. It took his entire career for him to finally have a good game, but I'm buying it. He looked great as a deep passer last year, number 1 rated, in fact, by Pro Football Focus. Completed nearly 50% of his deep balls, 47.6%. 14 of his touchdowns on deep throws. And that's kind of the calling card of this Pete Carroll offense. It was the case with Russell Wilson. Those moon bombs, nobody else could ever match what Russ was doing. You see him get removed from the system, and he's a joke. Geno comes into it, and he's great. So maybe Pete Carroll doesn't get the credit he deserves as well. Plus, he's a decent athlete, Geno Smith. Ran for the 8th most rush yard, but just 1 rushing touchdown. If that goes to 3 to 5 rushing touchdowns, even more room for Konami upside there. So I love Geno Smith, QB15. I think he's an absolute steal. And I could have shout out Daniel Jones. He would have been my guy other than Geno Smith, but I talk about him every single podcast. But in case people are only catching this show for whatever reason, that's my flag guy of the year. That's my guy, Daniel Jones, also going in that same range. It's really the only reason I don't have a lot of Geno Smith right now. It's because I do click Daniel Jones ahead of him, but it's one or the other for me. I love building my teams with 8 to 9 straight picks and then going after either Daniel Jones or Geno Smith. I think it's a fantastic strategy for 2023.
Anyone placing bets in the podcast that had Daniel Jones getting a reference in the first 8 minutes, the payoff is big.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's kind of a sucker bet. Like, I'm looking at the agenda and I'm seeing, Geno Smith, Richardson, Brock Purdy, and I was like, he's going to slide a Daniel Jones plug or two in here. Like, pretty
impossible not to.
All right, Mike.
He's going to be on Mahomes this year, Truth. It's as good as I felt about a late QB in a long time.
real quick though, Wolf, just without putting you too much on the spot, with this injury to JSN, how are you feeling about him? I mean, I know earlier before the injury, he was going 15 to 20 picks ahead of the other top rookies like Addison, especially in best ball. But where are you putting him these days? Now that he might be out a few weeks.
I think it's a great talking point. I always thought his price tag was a little too inflated, going at 55, 60. There's certainly the upside narrative there with him. I actually have very few shares, though, and I'm hoping he starts to fall. He was already around my 78 to 80, and I don't know that I'll move him down that much. Yes, he might miss a game or two, but once he's back, he is going to be dominant. I love him. I actually had my first draft last night, actual home league redraft. It was our wives and fiancés leagues with my buddies and our wives or fiancés. Great league, always fun. And I took JSN. I got him at pick like 110 or so last night. I absolutely am down to be scooping this guy up, especially because he'll probably be, if you have an IR spot, a guy that will eventually be labeled hurt and you can put into the IR. I'm still targeting him heavily, especially anytime if he's falling after pick 100. Bet on the talent. We've seen this with, it's a crazy comparison to toss out there, but look at Odell Beckham. Everybody knew he was a great prospect, comes in, has a hammy injury, he's going to miss the first 4 weeks, doesn't even get drafted in most leagues. And then, of course, he wins everybody who picked him up, me included, their league that season. I'm not saying he will necessarily be Odell, one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen. But again, he did outperform Olave and Garrett Wilson when they were all on the field together. So I will absolutely buy whatever dip we get. I was never buying him as the top 60 pick, but anywhere after 75, I know he'll miss some time, and I still like that late season surge we could see out of him for sure. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't really buying him much. I maybe had a handful of shares of him when he was going in the 50s. But I like when you said you got him at 110, that obviously that's a steal. But I agree, somewhere in the range of like 80, pick 80 or so. I think he's a good value. I mean, I personally watched him at the shoe on the weekends, and that guy's something special. I mean, he can make any receiver look like a second receiver. I mean, he just has the talent to do it all. So I think he's a good grab to buy him on the dip.
Love it.
All right. My first guy is Anthony Richardson. I think especially when it comes to home leagues where people might not be as sharp, I think he's a great steal. He's got a big range of where he's being drafted. Some people don't believe him. Some people want to take that stab pretty early on. But for right now, he's going at the 9-10 turn, QB 14 off the board. But I think he's got the potential to absolutely smash that price. I mean, first, let's just talk about the physical build. He's Cam Newton, but he's faster. He ran a 4.40 at the combine. I mean, he's just a freak of nature. He had a 10.00 relative athletic score, the most athletic QB to ever come out of college since like the 80s. It's absolutely insane. So first off, I want to talk about is what his performance could be strictly with his rushing capabilities. He went for, or I don't remember how many yards he had at Florida, but what I've got written down here, every quarterback who's reached 700 rushing yards in the last 5 years has finished as the QB 10 or better. He hit the 700-yard mark in just 12 games with Florida last year. So I think that's certainly within the range of possibilities for him to do in the NFL this year. And he doesn't even need the passing upside to be able to pay off at his QB 14 price. I'm just going to read off some names. Kyler Murray in 2020, second in rushing yards, 13th in passing yards, but he finished as the QB 2. Lamar Jackson 2020, first in rushing yards, 22nd in passing yards, QB 8. Hurts in 2021, first in rushing yards, 22nd in passing yards, QB 9. And there's a couple more examples of this Fields last year, but he doesn't even need the passing to be able to pay off in his price. If he hits that 750, 850 yard rushing yards mark, I think he can pay off big time. And he's an enormous human being. I mean, you know what he's going to do at the goal line. We saw what Cam Newton did in his rookie year at the goal line. I really don't think double-digit touchdowns are out of the range of possibilities for Anthony Richardson this year. And if he can do that, I think he's going to smash big time. And I just like the investment.
Oh, it's 110%. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Just it's a great call. Price tag's right. The Konami upside is so real. The fact that he's already been named. The only question I had with him was, when are you going to get him? He's already long been named the quarterback one here, the starter for week 1, which is huge. And then Jonathan Taylor gets moved. All the better. He'll literally be the entire offense at that point. You're not going to Deion Jackson at the stripe. Kareem Hunt, maybe they signed him, but even still, he would become that much more of a focal point. So to me, it's a win-win. You get Jonathan Taylor, great. You have another good weapon that will help you get into the red zone more often. You don't, great. You're going to also be the entire team there. 2.5 times more valuable rush yards compared to passing yards, 1.5 times more valuable rush TDs to pass TDs. So absolutely, it makes sense. Some of those discrepancies you made with some of those passing yards versus rushing yards and where they finish, it all makes sense. A top 10 finish. That was a great stat, 700 yards, and they've been a top 10 quarterback. Is that truth? I see you nodding. I didn't mean to take your thunder either. What were some of your takeaways?
You're not taking my thunder. I'm just taking all this in because this is the sort of thing we talk about all the time, but often we don't have the exact numbers or examples in front of us. And he just laid it out really well. That was great.
Absolutely. And so going into my deeper sleeper at this point, it kind of transitions nice. I have two. I know I'm cheating a little bit. And one I do like more, but it does make a little bit more sense to transition to one of these guys, given it also involves the Konami upside. That Sam Howell is one of the guys I really, really like as a potential sleeper quarterback that's getting undrafted right now in a lot of leagues. He, in fact, came out, and this happens a lot with when I make my projections. I'm stunned at where these guys end up coming out. He came out quarterback 12 in my first round of projections, and a lot of that was because of projecting a big amount of Konami upside. I had him going for around 600 yards and 7 touchdowns or so on the ground. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns last season in his first preseason start, and then he ultimately, Sam Howell, rushes for a touchdown in his only start last year, puts up 19 fantasy points despite only throwing, I believe, under 200 yards in his first start, and he still ultimately goes for over 19 fantasy points because of that rushing upside with Sam Howell. But then you mix in the fact that he's looked great as a passer so far this preseason, been named as the quarterback one, given how good he looked in camp, how far he separated, and he's backed it up with the preseason play. And about 3/4 of action or so far. He has 265 yards, 3 touchdowns, completing 75% of his passes, as well as running for 25 yards on 4 carries on the ground. He's made great plays with his legs, extending when he looks like he's going to take a sack, extending the play, making great throws on the run, but then also running for a lot of first downs too. Eric Bieniemy, that bump, I know it's not Mahomes, but he did have a great tutoring under Andy Reid here, Eric Bieniemy, and it's showing. He's creating a ton of mismatches in these early preseason. He's getting the running backs out in space. So I really like Sam Howell as a potential last-round stab. That would be my upside last-round stab at quarterback. But if you just need safety, I love Brock Purdy going as the quarterback 22, pick 173 on Fantasy Pros, 23, pick 162 on Underdog. Purdy was the quarterback 6 from week 14 when he became a starter and finished as the quarterback 8, 14, 13, 9, and 5 across those 5-game starts. Then caps the season off. This doesn't even get included in those numbers with a 34.9-point performance against Seattle in the playoffs that I think really emphasized the upside that Brock Purdy had, because we saw Debo rip off a 60-yard touchdown. Didn't have to do much on Purdy's side, but he didn't have Debo. Really, he only had Debo for 2 games, and he was kind of working himself back in. One, he only played a half because they were resting for the playoffs. So he only had 1 to 2 full games with Debo and was putting up these numbers. Now you give him Debo, healthy, motivated, odd-year Debo, where he always blows up in odd seasons. Ayuk looks like the best receiver in the league, apparently, according to training camp reports. Debo saying you can't cover Ayuk in a phone booth, but if he takes even another step, I already love Ayuk as he is. Imagine he takes another step. You got Kittle, you got CMC. We're talking about the best weapons cabinet as a holistic group in the NFL, maybe the best play caller in the NFL, and Kyle Shanahan in terms of getting these guys the ball in easy layup type of situations. And everybody says, okay, high floor, yeah, he had 2 touchdowns in every game, but is he really blowing up? He didn't have tons of huge games other than that 34-point game in the playoffs. But they're also talking about how much more aggressive the offense looks in year 2 under Purdy. Now they fully committed to the guy. We do just remember, I know Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't scream upside, but the last quarterback he had before that was when Kyle Shanahan was over with the Falcons. Matt Ryan's crazy MVP season. Like, it's not like Kyle Shanahan can't coach a ceiling season out of his quarterback. So between the play calling, the weapons cabinet, and the fact that Purdy seems to be able to get the job done himself, he's the ultimate quarterback at the end of drafts. If you don't feel great about your starter, let's say you go with my Daniel Jones prediction. I can't say it's like a guaranteed lock. Daniel Jones goes crazy. Purdy's an excellent QB2 to then target as a nice higher floor backup with also some ceiling to him too. Howell being the guy that if you just want to take a big stab, you don't love the upside of the 2 quarterbacks you might have drafted or the quarterback ahead of him. He's more of the could swing and win leagues. But Purdy, I definitely feel better about. I have him ranked higher. He's going to smash his quarterback 23 ADP. No doubt about it. Even as his floor, he'll destroy that. What if he hits a ceiling that we don't really recognize right now?
All right, Mike, what are your thoughts on, well, I'll just spoil it for everybody, Kenny Pickett?
All right, yeah. My late guy is Kenny Pickett, going in the middle of the 14th round right now. I don't think he has the ceiling quite like Purdy or Howell do, but I think he's a solid guy to put on your roster if you don't take one of those elite guys in the first handful of rounds of drafts. But if you're looking for a more 2 quarterbacks on your roster, see what kind of works out, I think he's a good target. But Kenny Pickett, he was a rookie last year. He kind of got thrown into the fire, played 12 games. He looked okay, nothing special though. But there was a few things that stood out to me that make me interested in him for this year. I mean, first off is the price. I mean, going in the 14th round, he's basically free. But second off, he's his rushing contributions to his fantasy performance are definitely they're non-zero. He's an above average rusher. We saw that in college at Pitt. He has some of those highlight plays, but last season he had several games with 35 plus rushing yards. I think it was about 3 games where he had that. He had 3 rushing touchdowns in 12 games, and he ranked 11th among quarterbacks in red zone rushes despite only playing 12 games. So I think he can punch in a handful of touchdowns, maybe 5 or so in his full 17-game season. And he's definitely going to contribute some to his fantasy performance on the ground. And then when it comes to his work as a passer, I mean, first off, he's got a quality arsenal of weapons. I mean, you got the reliable, always open Deontay Johnson, who we talked about on Monday. You've got George Pickens, who can make the contested catch. He's a freak athlete. And you've got Pat Freiermuth, who plays that kind of safety blanket role underneath in the flats, getting open for Pickett. But he can also get up the seams and make plays for himself. So I think he's got a quality set of receivers, and he can utilize those to have a better performance through the air this year. And the final thing I want to talk about when it comes to Pickett is about their ability to convert touchdowns. Last season, in the second half of the year, the Steelers ranked 3rd in yards per drive. They were moving the ball down the field, but they just weren't converting the touchdowns. If you look at their box scores, you see they have like 13-point games, 20-point games. They're not really cracking the 24-point threshold all that often. But if they can turn those drives where they're churning out yards into touchdowns, I think that's going to do great for Pickett's fantasy performance, and you can contribute to rosters.
That's a really good point. You see all the time guys whose seasons could have gone a completely different way if they had just been able to punch it in a few times. It's funny. I didn't really think of the Steelers that way, but I had no idea. You said they were 3rd in yards per drive?
Yeah, in the second half of the year last year, they were moving the ball. They just weren't converting.
That is one that I would not have predicted. I would have said like 20th or something like that. So that's interesting. Before we get into running backs, I would be remiss if I did not ask our loyal followers, listeners, viewers, to give us a like if you like what we're doing, or even if you don't. If you're here, just push the button. It doesn't cost you anything. But give us a like, give us a love, give us a thumbs up, whatever currency your social media is, or whatever viewing platform you're using, whatever currency they're using, give it to us. We need it. We'd really appreciate it. So send some love our way. We see we've already got some folks with us this morning. Got a few comments in the comments section. Dave Campanelli representing, as always.
Hell yeah.
9 a.m.
11 questions in the early morning mailbag before we really get going. Keep that growing, guys. Would love to answer any questions you have. I know this is the big season, so keep it going. Keep them coming. I love that. Great stuff.
All right.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments. Check out some more videos and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.